Today is Sunday. It is August the 22nd, 2021. I'm inviting you to join me today for our worship services at Hillsdale Baptist Church. You can join us online at hillsdalebaptist.org. We are located in Tampa. Now, today's devotional is titled Right Motive, Wrong Method Invites God's Judgment. Our scripture reading is 1 Chronicles chapter 13 and Psalms 107. Now, our first scripture reading is taken from 1 Chronicles 13, and it records the tragic events that accompanied David's failed attempt to retrieve the Ark of the Covenant. Newly crowned as king in 1 Chronicles 12, it was in David's heart to honor the Lord, bring the Ark to Jerusalem so that all the people might worship the Lord. Now, in 1 Chronicles 13, verse 1, with the affirmation of his leaders, David proclaimed to all the congregation of Israel his desire to bring again the Ark of God to us. Now, we learn in verse 3 that the Ark, testimony of God's presence in the midst of his people, and its mercy seat, a symbol of his heavenly throne, that Ark had been forsaken for many years. We know in 1 Samuel chapter 4 it had fallen into the hands of the Philistines, and the ark had been returned to Israel. However, when the men of Beth-Shemesh had touched the ark and violated its holiness, many of them had been slain by the Lord in 1 Samuel chapter 6. While fearing the Lord's judgment, the men of Kirjath-Jearim had retrieved the ark and placed it in the home of Abinadab, where it would remain for the next 20 years. Now, as we look at 1 Chronicles 13, we understand it was admirable on David's part to bring the ark to Jerusalem. However, as we read 1 Samuel 13, 7 through 10, we begin to understand that he violated spiritual principles and God judged. The first principle he violated was when Uzzah reached out and he touched the ark and treated as common that which God had declared to be holy. Now, he had lived in the home of Abinadab where the ark was kept, and he should have known the reverence the ark of God not only deserved but demanded. The law of God was clear. The ark was never to be touched. Numbers 4:15. Well, though Uzzah's motive was to steady the ark as it was being taken on the cart, he violated God's precepts, and regardless of his motives, his actions were unacceptable to God. You see, the use of a cart to transport the ark violated the method God had prescribed for its transport. It was to be carried by the priests using staves, that is, rods that were overlaid with gold, according to Exodus 25. Now the question would be, from where did the notion of employing a new cart to transport the ark, where did that arise? Where did that idea come from? Well, as we read 1 Samuel chapter 6 and verse 7 and 8, the cart was the means by which the Philistines had returned the ark to Israel. So David had employed a pagan method to accomplish a righteous end, and that was unacceptable to God. While his desire was to bring the ark to Jerusalem, it was right in the eyes of the people. 1 Chronicles 13, 3 and 4. It was the means, not the motive, that God judged. Now, I invite you to consider David's response to Uzzah's death. He was, as we read in 1 Chronicles 13 and verse 12, was displeased, that meaning he was angry. Now, was he angry with God, or was he angry with himself for failing to seek the way of the Lord? Well, his anger was soon displaced with fear, for David was afraid of God. And he asked the question, how shall I bring the ark of God home to me? In that we sense a frustration. Well, David did not continue bringing the ark on its journey to Jerusalem, but instead he entrusted it to the house of one Obed-Edom, the Gittite. Now, there are some that suggest that the possibility that the Obed-Edom was not a Jew, a Hebrew, he was a Philistine. I don't know if that's true or not, but this I do know. that as we read verse 14, we see that God smiled upon Obed-Edom's home. We read in verse 14, "And the ark of God remained with the family of Obed-Edom in his house 3 months. And the Lord blessed the house of Obed-Edom and all that he had." My study of 1 Chronicles 13 has reminded me of a quote I often heard thundered from the pulpit of my Bible college. And it was this: "It is never right to do wrong in order to get a chance to do right." That is a quote from the late evangelist Dr. Bob Jones Sr. Let me read it again. "It is never right to do wrong in order to get a chance to do right." In other words, the end never justifies the means. Now, as you have your scripture reading today, there is one more chapter to study. It is Psalm chapter 107. It is a psalm of celebration and thanksgiving. I invite you to read that psalm, enjoy it, underline it. It is packed with inspiration. And oh my, how we need inspiration in this day in which we find ourselves living. God bless you. Remember, it's never right to do wrong to get a chance to do right. Don't reach out and touch and defile that which God has desired to be holy. And by the way, remember, we are called to be a holy people. In fact, Romans 12 verse 1, "I beseech you therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, you present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service." Let's live for the Lord today, choosing to live a holy life, denying the pleasures of sin and the flesh, and choosing to honor Him. God bless, and bye-bye.